Now on to Capitol Hill, where Congress is working on a bill aimed at the Hong Kong protest, and it's already getting some pushback from Beijing as expected. Now, U.S. lawmakers call it a bill to help enforce human rights. China says it's interference in internal affairs. Michele Greenstein has the story from Hong Kong.
On Wednesday, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. Now it moves to the Senate, where it's expected to pass. The bill is an amendment to the U.S. Hong Kong Policy Act of 1992, which governs U.S. policy toward the region. Carol Ng-Man-Yi, the chairperson of the Confederation of Trade Unions, part of the coalition widely reported to be the organizers of the current anti-government movement, appreciates the swift action on the part of the U.S.
I'm still very positive about to pass through the Senate, and I'm still very positive about the entire support from U.S. I'm really thankful that our situation is widely understood by the U.S. Congress.
The proposed law opens the door for sanctions, including the seizure of assets, on individuals deemed to be threatening human rights or democracy in Hong Kong. Chief Executive Carrie Lam responded to its passage in the House, calling it unneeded foreign interference.
This is a foreign parliament interfering with our domestic matters. I don't need a foreign parliament to tell us how human rights in the judicial system in Hong Kong are important to us.
The bill also mandates that the State Department recertify that Hong Kong is autonomous from China every year. And then, if the region doesn't meet these autonomy qualifications, the U.S. will no longer treat Hong Kong differently than the rest of China when it comes to any provision of U.S. law. This means that Hong Kong would lose its special trading status. Hong Kong currently serves as China's primary method for obtaining foreign investment. By reevaluating or even suspending treaties or agreements pertaining to Hong Kong, the U.S. could further isolate China economically. Beijing considers the bill, which enjoys bipartisan support, an attempt to interfere in China's internal affairs and delay its economic rise.
We express our strong indignation and firm opposition to the U.S. House of Representatives' insistence on passing the so-called Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act.
In an open letter to Congress, U.S. anti-war activists called the bill an act of moral hazard that implicates the U.S. Congress in violence, destruction, mayhem, injury, potential loss of life, and the degradation of civic processes. And political analyst Andrew Karibko says that with the passage of this law, a statistically small number of rioters can end up holding the entire autonomous region of over 7 million people hostage because the authorities' legal response to their illegal behavior could trigger the U.S.'s threatened economic consequences against the whole population. Karibko says that the real motivations for such a policy have more to do with fanning the flames of unrest than concern for freedom or democracy.
American strategists believe that the HKH-RDA is all that's needed to catalyze a self-sustaining cycle of unrest there that would eventually lead to an outflow of wealth and educated residents. This in turn would contribute to further radicalizing the most nationalist-inclined members of the population into potentially making an Alamo-like last stand to provoke the hoped-for Tiananmen Square 2.0 intervention. The U.S. was expecting that course of action all along to serve as the tripwire for pressuring the EU into cutting its growing trade ties with China and sanctioning it, thus facilitating their return to the American economic fold.
With the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act one step closer to becoming law, Hong Kongers may be getting more than what they bargained for. In Hong Kong for News.Views.Hughes, Michele Greenstein, RT.
It's hard to clear through the debris and get right down to the nitty-gritty that is real news.
New details are coming to light in the case of Jeffrey Epstein as more
spread between the 2-year Treasury yield and the 10-year Treasury yield.
Several hundred students are staging a sit-in.
The Amazon rainforest, and the blame game is underway. It's time for RT America. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button.